Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Introduction to CivicSpark webinar. I want to thank you all for joining us today. My name is Kif Scheuer. I'm the Climate Change Program Director with the Local Government Commission and the overall Program Director for the CivicSpark program. Today we'll be giving you an overview of the program, introducing a new program offering, the Water Core program, and talking about how that is similar to and different from CivicSpark as a whole. We'll talk about the application process and timeline and definitely leave a chance for questions. If you do have questions, my colleague Ariadna is listening in and also looking at the chat window or the question window. Feel free to use the hand raising function and we can unmute you and give you the floor to ask a question during the presentation, or type your question in and we'll try and address it as we go forward. I really don't mind if folks interrupt. It's better sometimes to answer those questions as they come up. Just by way of introduction, I want to let folks know who may not be familiar with the Local Government Commission. We are a nonprofit that's been serving communities, mostly in California, for 35 years, working on identifying leaders who want to make their communities more livable, to create sustainable options, and to ideally elevate those folks and give them the resources they need to succeed. And this program is very much a part of our mission as a nonprofit in the community to support capacity building for the local governments in particular, and by extension, the communities of California. We're the overall program manager for CivicSpark. We provide all the infrastructure, the recruitment, the hiring, the training. We coordinate activities, and we ensure the performance goals are met. With me on the line is Michael McCormick from the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. And let me make sure, Michael, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can.
Great. Slides aren't proceeding. I just wanted to note that. So we're still on slide one.
Thank you for letting me know. Let me see what I can do about that.
Great. So yeah, so it's great to be on the call today. Thank you for those of you that were able to join the call today. OPR, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, a couple years ago got together with California volunteers to identify opportunities to leverage a program called a Governor's Initiative in California volunteers. It really creates an AmeriCorps program around priorities of the governor at the time. And in this case, we identified some significant needs at the local and regional level around capacity building. We were in the midst of emerging from the Great Recession, and a number of our local and regional partners had serious capacity issues in being able to deal with a lot of the policy and program initiatives that they needed to move forward on, or that were priorities for their organizations. So we partnered with the Local Government Commission to initiate the CivicSpark planning grant and design process, and we're very excited to be in another year of CivicSpark, having had many thousands of hours of AmeriCorps members working on the ground, doing great work, really helping to build case studies to inform state agencies, state work, OPR work, technical guidance, update to general plan guidelines, modifications of our tools and resources that we provide, and really thinking about gaps in our service structure as a state to help our local partners do the work that they want to do around energy, climate change, sustainability, etc. So CivicSpark was really designed to create support for our local and regional partners and really access these tools that we've helped to develop. And I won't be, unfortunately, available to be on the rest of the call, but as you go through, and if there are questions that you have regarding the state that KIF or the LGC staff are not able to respond to, I'm happy to follow up after the call and loop back with all of you. So thank you again for being on the call, and I look forward to working with you as we go forward in the program.
Thanks so much, Michael. Really appreciate it. If you have a second, did the slides advance to the partnership slide?
The OPR slide is live right now.
Excellent. Good. It looks like we figured out our problem. All right. Well, so moving forward, we just want to talk, after that introduction, what exactly is CivicSpark? CivicSpark is a Governor's Initiative AmeriCorps program, and that has two parts. As a Governor's Initiative, that means that we worked in partnership with Michael's office to identify needs that aligned with this administration's priorities. And out of that assessment process, the local capacity building for climate response became the initiative that we decided to pursue. AmeriCorps programs are national service programs. AmeriCorps has been around for since the Clinton administration. We just celebrated the 20th year last year, and it has grown to have a population of about 80,000 AmeriCorps members annually serving around the country addressing community needs. It's a pretty phenomenal overall program. It was created as the domestic alternative to the Peace Corps. It's had strong bipartisan support for its 20 years, and we're proud to be part of this large national movement to engage community members in service to address compelling needs. We're clearly focused on climate change and helping the public sector respond to climate change in California. 2014-15 was our first year, and the way that we work is that we place teams across California to work on a variety of issues. So why are we doing this? Why are we taking this approach? Why is capacity building so important? This may be an obvious question to some of you who work in this space, but it's worth pointing out that as climate change has become a more pressing issue in the awareness of both leaders in this state, certainly, and in the policies that have flown from them, a lot of new requirements have been created. These are requirements that have a pretty sophisticated technical element. They may deal with scientific information. They may deal with long-term forecasting. And local governments have been at the forefront of addressing those problems. They were champions for developing climate action plans and greenhouse gas inventories, but they need help. Because these aren't new requirements being layered on top of existing requirements, yet we've lost some of the existing tools for planning, like redevelopment funds. We've also we're emerging from the Great Recession that started really in 2007. And you can see in this graphic that public sector versus private sector employment both took a big hit. But private sector employment has by and large recovered, but the public sector has not. And by some estimations, may never recover in the same way that it was. And so that's a loss of people to do work at a time when we're asking them to do more. And so CivicSpark is meant to address that gap in some degree. The team as a whole consists of both my staff at the Local Government Commission, as well as a number of other partners, and I'll mention a couple of them. The Corporation for National and Community Service is the agency that funds AmeriCorps programs across the country. They're in California. They work in partnership with California Volunteers, which is the state service commission that helped guide and develop this program and provides us with support. We also work in many regions with Encore Fellows. These are seasoned project managers who act as our regional coordinators, so that there's always a local staff person in the region who can meet with members and partners to make sure that things are moving forward. And then, of course, there's the fellows themselves, who are really the backbone of this program. And our AmeriCorps fellows are all college graduates. We aim to have folks with relevant experience, usually environmental degrees, some service experience, and a desire to build a professional career in addressing these issues. So we're really trying to tap the sort of best and the brightest that are coming out of some pretty amazing programs and give them the field experience that their schooling can't provide, and which we can provide by matching them up with all these amazing local partners. We serve across California. In our first year, we served all the way from Eureka down to San Diego. This year, we're in Eureka, just down to Southern California. We didn't get a San Diego team. So we have 8 regions, if you will, clustered. We have 2 big clusters in the Bay Area and in the LA region for obvious reasons given the population. But then we have some nice pockets in the Sierras, in the North Coast, in Sacramento, the Central Coast, and the Central Valley. We can place members just about everywhere, but we like to cluster them for the purposes of their experience and ability to work in a cohort. Each regional team consists of 3 to 8 CivicSpark members who have a regional coordinator who provides oversight with them and connects with partners, and also usually a regional partner organization that helps to contextualize the work and helps to provide some guidance and support and engage with local partners in the region. Our service delivery model in terms of how the program goes about its work is that we recruit pretty heavily and nationally 48 college graduates with environmental backgrounds. We do the placement work. We work with partners to identify projects and do a big matching process that is going on really from now when we start identifying projects all the way up to the start of the service year, so that we're ideally placing members in roles that they are excited about with partners who are excited to have them on board. We, through that work, engage 96 public agencies. Those are cities, counties, special district, regional agencies. For CivicSpark, it can be anything that is not a state or federal agency and is a public organization. We can have members work in state agencies in support of local government or in nonprofits in support of local governments, but there has to be a direct connection to the local agencies. And then ideally, the work that is being done is the capacity building activity. So we're rather neutral, and I'll show you some examples in a minute, but we're neutral about the kind of climate work that's going on because there's so much need out there, but it's the doing of the work and the providing of service that helps to build that capacity. Because we are neutral about the kind of work, the scope of work as far as the content, we try and structure the program so that it has a similar arc for all fellows and has a relatively consistent approach to delivering work. So at the beginning of their service year, the fellows all conduct gap assessments where they interview staff, they review key documents so that they can identify for themselves what they're going to be doing and how that connects to the larger goals of the community. They implement their service project based on those gap assessment results. And it might be a research, a planning, or an implementation project, sort of anywhere that the local government has identified a need to do the work. Simultaneously with their service project, they have about 150 hours of their service commitment, which is a total of 1,700 hours, that they dedicate to building volunteer engagement in the community. So they might work with a local nonprofit, they might work with the local governments that they're working with or their partner, and build out some events and activities that help to get more people in the community engaged in climate action work. At the end of every service year, we try and design an event or an activity or a training that allows the fellow to share their results, to identify next steps, and hopefully provides a platform to carry that work forward so that we can kind of realize those capacity building gains, that the work just doesn't get done and handed off and closed off. Some project examples to touch on. In the climate change space, we're doing a lot of climate action plan measures all over the state. We're developing a database of climate action measures. We're doing water projects in LA and other regions where we're identifying planning options and helping to identify policy approaches that might respond to climate change and help better manage water. We're doing a number of transportation projects related to electric vehicles in the North Coast or alternative vehicle fuels. Identifying risks and assessments of those risks for the higher speed rail system. So you can see we're really touching a lot of different issues because we're bringing smart, talented, motivated people in who are going to dig into the work, but they have a wide variety of ability to support many different project types. Couple spotlight projects I'll touch on here. This was from last year. Kyle Ramey worked with the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency in San Mateo County, as well as with the San Mateo County City-County Association of Governments on a shared project to engage the school districts and public buildings in water and energy efficiency projects. He helped host an expo and award event and facilitated workshops and did a lot of direct outreach and engagement with the schools themselves to build awareness. He was subsequently hired by BOSCA to continue some of that work and has also been providing some guidance and support to the new CivicSpark fellow who came in who had some of the continuation of that role. One of the things that we like to highlight here is how an approach that can be developed and fielded with a CivicSpark member can lead to benefits that were maybe not going to be realized without them that have real results. So you see in parallel here two examples. You see in Los Angeles a cost-benefit analysis tool developed around water conservation, and in the Southern California region in the San Gabriel Valley COG, there was a home energy screening program, an outreach and engagement around point of permit energy efficiency upgrades. These were the two approaches that had been identified by the partners. The fellows in both cases, in the one case in Los Angeles County, it was one person. In the other, it was, I think, 3 people. They developed these resources or program elements over an extended period of time. A significant amount of research, planning, or market development went into developing the resource. The goal was to, in the one case, identify water savings, and the other provide opportunities for homeowners to identify energy efficiency opportunities. Then once they turned around and put these projects into work, the analysis tool identified over 280 million gallons of potential savings from from water projects that could be implemented by the county. And with the EASY program, the members completed 70 energy assessments and reached over 1,700 customers. So this was an example of where really from nothing, from the idea that the project partner had, the fellows were really able to build an approach that had concrete benefits and delivered results all within 11 months. Program-wide, in our first year, we were able to deliver 62,000 hours of service to California communities, and you can see from this list of different project areas the kinds of activity, product outcomes that happened. We were able to reach over 2,500 community members through 37 projects that supported 88 local governments, and over 95% of our projects met or exceeded the goals that were defined by our project partners, by the beneficiaries, the local governments we were serving. So that's a really great outcome for us. We also saw a lot of interest from the folks who wanted to be fellows. For our second year application pool, we had 7 applications for each open position, which is actually greater than more established AmeriCorps programs that typically see, because it's a low-paying a stipended position, 5 applicants per position, and we're already up to 7. We expect that to go up next year. Currently, for this year, we're doing 42 projects, so we've grown our project portfolio, and we're going to reach hopefully over 100 local government agencies. And the program leverages match funding, local match funding, and we'll get into the costing, but we bring federal dollars, but we draw forth over $1 million a year in local match funding to support this work. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Danielle Dolan, who's LGC's water manager. And she'll talk about the CivicSpark Water Corps program, which is a new initiative for this coming year. Danielle, are you on the line?
I'm here. Thank you, Kif. So as Kif mentioned, we recognize a significant lack in local capacity to implement state mandates, not only with climate change, but especially in the water sector. We have new statewide mandates on water use reductions due to the drought. We have new guidelines for the Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance. We have a new statewide stormwater strategic initiative, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act that was passed at the end of 2014. And then, of course, we have other areas of interest across the state in both the water energy nexus and an area that LGC has been working on for many years that is starting to gain more leverage across the state, is the intersect between land use planning and water management. And local governments that we've been working with don't have the capacity in-house to address all of these issues. So that's why we're launching the Water Corps program. It will follow the CivicSpark program in many ways with a few differences. We are going to start this coming fall with 20 fellows in addition to the 48 CivicSpark fellows. These 20 fellows will be placed in teams of 2 in probably 10 regions across the state and focusing specifically on sustainable water management related projects, especially looking at that connection between land use planning and water management, but also looking at some other state priorities. The overall structure of Water Corps is very similar to CivicSpark in the process and the application phase. We were able to decrease the cost for the fellows. We eliminated the middle layer of supervision, which is the regional coordinators within CivicSpark, and that was able to drive down the cost of the fellows, but it also increases the level of supervision requirements and responsibilities of the local host agency that's hosting the pair of fellows. So they're going to need to provide a steady place for the team to work and some direct oversight on a regular basis. Of course, we still have LGC staff in our office in Sacramento that will provide the oversight for all 20 of the Water Corps fellows and regular check-ins with all of the host sites, but there will be some different responsibilities on the part of the host site. Also, the eligibility requirements for the participating agencies are different, mainly because CivicSpark, of course, focuses on climate change adaptation and mitigation, whereas the eligibility criteria for Water Corps focus on your ability to meet some of these statewide priorities at the local level in regard to water management. Back to you, Kev.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Um,
No,
so,
this one.
oh, did you want to touch on this in more depth, or did you cover that?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. Um, so again, some of the key issues that we're hoping the fellows will focus on is building networks at the local level to implement the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, as well as the California Water Action Plan. And similar to CivicSpark, they will have their own unique project with a specific scope of work in any of these subject areas: land use planning, interconnections with water management, flood mitigation, stormwater, supply and demand challenges, overall watershed health, but also with a connection to building local capacity for networking across jurisdictions and across sectors in regard to implementing SIGMA and the California Water Action Plan. Next slide.
So, as I mentioned a couple slides before Danielle gave the overview of WaterCore, there is a cost involved. CivicSpark is funded by both the California Corporation for National and Community Service and our partner fiscal contribution. The full value of the contribution from the federal side, the in-kind support from OPR, is about equivalent to the amount that we ask for from our partners. So you're really getting a program that has a quite substantial, robust piece behind it, and the portion you're paying for is about half of the total cost. The way that we've structured the program for CivicSpark is a little different, as Danielle mentioned, than WaterCore. And so I'll go through CivicSpark first, and then I'll go to WaterCore. I do want to mention that we have a lot of flexibility in how we contract for services. So if you are a public agency and you have funding, you would contract directly with us. If you are an NGO, you can contract directly with us, but we have to have that project service piece that connects to the local government. You can bring together several pots of funding. We have several partners who are projects in which we have a couple of different pieces of the contract coming to support a fellow. So we have some flexibility there. We can also have state agencies be the funder, and we're working on some agreements around that to make that easier if there's state funding available. If the funding is federal, we have to get a sign-off from the funding agency. That's an AmeriCorps rule, so that they allow federal to federal matching, but it is at the discretion of the other agency. So if you had DOE funding or EPA funding, you could ask your grant officer about that. If it's a for-profit entity that's providing the funding, we need to treat it as a sponsorship. We can talk about a project sponsorship, but we can't have direct oversight of the fellow scope by a for-profit entity for their benefit. So the way we structure CivicSpark is you can elect either a 3-month, 6-month, or the full 11-month embedded fellow. I would say almost all of our fellows this year are fully embedded. We do have a handful of 6-month fellows, and we have one fellow who's split between 3 people. We find most people want that deeper engagement, and so we've really geared the program around that. But for those folks who can only imagine doing a smaller project or can't afford the full project, we do provide that as an option. It is contingent on us being able to match in that geographic region against another 6-month or combination of months projects. So there's a little bit of a caveat there. It's a little bit more expensive because we wanted to make the baseline cost as cheap as we could for the fully embedded option, because we feel like it has the most value. So with each costing structure, it's a base cost for the whole period of time. And we break that down for your benefit into an estimated project hours. So you can see it's either 325 hours at the equivalent of $20 an hour, and then it goes from there. That is an all-inclusive rate. It's not what the fellow is getting paid, it's the program cost. It does cover workers' comp, liability, a lot of other considerations that normally would be borne by the organization who's taking on, say, an intern. So typically, if you have an intern, your eventual overhead costs, and you're paying that intern $10 an hour, your total cost might be more like $20 an hour. So a lot of folks, when they look at $18 an hour, they say, well, I can get somebody for less than that. You're not really getting just that person, and your costs are probably more significant than you would imagine just looking at the hourly rate. We also throw in quite a lot of additional benefits. There's prep time that goes into this. The first, depending on the scale of the project, up to 2 weeks of the work is really kind of on our dime as they get going. They do some of the work around the project to get the gap assessment done. They take care of some administrative engagement. We also have small amounts of funding that go towards project-related travel costs. If that's for, offsetting the occasional project-related travel, if your project has like daily or even weekly outreach efforts, you're going to need to identify a budget because we cannot ask our AmeriCorps members to pay for their own travel. The other thing I would say is the members serve for 1,700 hours over the course of the 11 months. Of that, 1,300 or so is dedicated to their project work, which means the other 400 are the prep hours, their volunteer engagement project, which is 150 hours, and their professional development. They are participating in training on a monthly basis with our regional coordinators and with our staff, and with statewide webinars. They go to a retreat in the middle of the year. So they are growing professionally and getting a lot of mentorship and support that provide benefit to you as the partner. And so there's a lot, and the volunteer project also is beneficial in your community because it's them doing work on behalf of climate action in your community. So really you're getting a whole program umbrella and structure that brings with it a lot of value. And as Michael pointed out, there's also a connection upstream and downstream to state priorities and resources that just bringing someone in on your own wouldn't bring you. Now, WaterCorps is a bit different, as Danielle mentioned, in both how it's priced and the supervision structure. So there is no regional coordinator. There would be direct staff in LGC's office in Sacramento that would be kind of a project coordination. But the host of the project agrees to take on 2 fellows in-house for the full duration. There's no sort of partial durations. They can sort of sub out some of those fellows to their partners or work in partnership with their partners, but they're the host organization who agrees to take that on. They get 2,700 hours, but it's only $14 an hour, so it's significantly less than CivicSpark. At the regular CivicSpark, and on top of that, we offer a host stipend to offset the supervisory responsibilities, because this includes things like checking and approving time cards and expense reports and providing us with some reporting that normally our regional coordinators do. So we've really brought down the cost, but we are asking that those hosts engage in more supervisory responsibilities. They help set up some of the training activities for the fellow. But because of the nature of the work, that this is a more coordinated and focused program, we also hope that the host organizations who sign up for WaterCorps are really bought in, because they're getting so much local network building and engagement and resource analysis out of it that it's very consistent with their mission and activities anyway. So we don't see that as an incredible burden, but we also want to recognize that it is taking on additional staffing. So as far as some of the tactical, practical application and startup process, we are taking applications right now. On our website is an application page with where you can provide basic details, information about the public agencies receiving the services. After we get applications, we set up phone calls. Either myself or Danielle, depending on whether it's a WaterCorps or CivicSpark application, will follow up, talk about the scope of the work, talk about the project hours and costing and next steps, and provide a template service agreement, which identifies the roles and responsibilities in a more formal way, and work to execute that document. Prior to the fellow starting, both these programs require that the public agency staff will be involved. They could be the project partner, or they could be the sort of more satellite beneficiaries, have to complete a survey. We call it a pre-service capacity survey that sets a baseline understanding of issues and outlines the goals for the project. We come back to that at the end of the service year and do the survey again to see whether we've met our goals and actually maybe increase some of the knowledge around these issues. For CivicSpark, the next step is when the fellows first come on board, and I mentioned this earlier, they conduct a gap assessment, which is this review of key documents. They meet with the staff, they finalize their goals, they set up their volunteer project. For WaterCorps, it's a little different. They're taking out the gap assessment as a formal stage and just having the fellow and the host site supervisor work in collaboration with the project partners to outline a specific scope of work. It's less of a formal document, but maybe more of a structured scope of work. So as far as program eligibility, we also have some requirements around that. All AmeriCorps programs have to set a ceiling for the kind of beneficiaries they're serving. So the local governments that are receiving the services, these aren't the partners necessarily, though they can be. So if you're an NGO, this is not about you. This is about the local governments that we're talking to and that are going to be connected to this project. For CivicSpark, in order to be an eligible local government, you must demonstrate a capacity need, which is indicated by the absence of one or more of these items. A full-time dedicated sustainability staff person, a formally adopted climate action plan or similar mechanism, depending on the kind of agency, and specific mechanisms that annually track climate action progress across the entire organization and community. And that's really the highest bar that means that most folks that I've ever run into are eligible, because even if folks have staffing and a plan, that tracking mechanism can be lacking. CivicSpark projects also have to meet a minimum of 200 hours, but with the way that we do things with 3-6 months, that's not really an issue. WaterCorps has a similar eligibility structure, but different criteria designed around water capacity needs. So you'll see, again, it's the absence of one or more criteria. And in this case, again, we talk about staff, but it's staff dedicated to cross-sector and interjurisdictional collaboration or water and land use. Whether the agency is not a member of an IRWIMP, an Integrated Regional Water Management Plan, whether the agency is not actively participating in GSA formation or GSP development, and whether the agency is not currently equipped to meet their data research, planning, engagement, or coordination needs. And that for them is also the high bar, right? Taking some of these steps may get you some of the way there, but most agencies are still struggling to meet their needs in this space. So last slide before we start taking questions, key dates. Call for proposals is open now. Danielle and myself are available to talk with potential partners about opportunities for engagement. We have a July 1st priority application deadline to get your basic application in. I would encourage you to do it sooner than later. Last year, we were oversubscribed. I had to set up a wait list. By October 1st, we really want to see all our service agreements signed by partners, so we're not going into the start of the service year still negotiating on contracts and roles. Because in early October, we do a 1-week orientation for all the fellows, and then they come to you following that ready to work and hopefully all set up for their project activities. So at this point, I'd love to open the floor to questions from any of the attendees. You can either text your question in, and Ariadna is helping us to keep an eye on that, or you can raise your hand using the hand icon, and we will unmute you and let you ask your question directly. So please feel free to let us know if you have questions about either CivicSpark or WaterCorps or the state role. Really would love to just have more of a conversation about the program. Not seeing any questions coming in. Anybody? You could ask about a specific project idea, experience we've had with other partners, qualifications of the candidates, anything. I will wait about a minute more, and if we don't get any questions, I will let y'all go. So I'm not seeing any more questions. That's fine. I guess I hopefully did my job well. I will mention as we close, in your control panel, there are 2 handouts. And one is the slides from today. The other is a flyer on the program. I encourage you to download them so you have them for your reference or to share with your colleagues. We would welcome any conversations with you all about either of these programs. You could be interested in both and not sure which way to go, and Danielle and I could talk to you about either one. We would encourage you to let your colleagues know, explore options and opportunities. If you go to visit our website, not only can you see the application, but you can see a lot of information about past projects and partners that we've had, if you're wondering exactly what happens with the program. Again, please feel free to follow up as with any further questions. And I guess with that, I'll say thank you so much. I'll express my gratitude from the governor's office, from Michael, who couldn't stay through to the end, and Danielle, I'm sure, is also thankful for your attention, and we look forward to talking with you. Have a good day.
Thank you.